John Wooten, the head of the Fritz Pollard Alliance, is somebody to be profoundly respected. His position on this matter is not wrong in terms of its intent. I agree with him that the word should be eliminated. I agree with Richard Lapchick, who I saw on the OTL special with Mike Wilbon and Jamel Hill and Ryan Clark, who did a phenomenal job. Congratulations to him as well as Wilbon and those guys. I get all of that. I understand it. But if you want to have a policy implemented, it should have been as simple as this. All offensive language is prohibited. Period. The focus on the N-word ultimately brings the focus to black folk. But the flip side to it is that I find it, and I'm going to use this word, reprehensible on the part of John Wooten and anybody who agrees with him, and I mean anybody, to focus on this word in such a way where we're focusing ultimately on blacks and how, whether, as Mike Wilbon explained it, whether it's the youth or whether it's older individuals within the African-American community, how we communicate privately with one another. I'm going to say this respectfully to people outside of the black community, particularly white folk. Who the hell do you think you are? It's crossing the line. And what I mean by that is that we can't sit here and say, well, you know what, when we were mutilated and maimed and murdered and hung and all of this stuff, the last word we heard was that word. And yet find a way to focus on black folk being the problem because of how they choose to use it amongst themselves privately. Does anyone see the flagrant hypocrisy in that? Because I do. I have a problem. I don't have a problem with John Wooten wanting the word eliminated. I have a problem with him bringing attention to it and highlighting it in such a fashion that you're essentially calling on white folk, could you help us out here in eliminating the use of the word? Really? Because when we talk about its heinous nature, the heinous nature of the N-word and so on and so forth, well, who made it heinous? Who's the perpetrators of that?
Exactly.
Who's responsible for that? So all I'm trying to say is that, is it an issue in our community? Sure. I'm looking at Mike Wilbon communicating with Jason Whitlock, and I was proud that both of them were communicating with one another and really articulating and elocuting the difference in their opinion. Clearly, it's a discussion that's worthy of having. Clearly, it's a word because now we've got other folks outside the black community that feel free to use it, and we have to address that. No doubt, Mr. Wooten is right about that. But when you bring the kind of attention that he's brought to it in a way where you're reaching outside of our community for assistance, you're essentially simultaneously asking us to forget the perpetrators of this heinous word. Who made it heinous? Why was it heinous? Who are the perpetrators? What iniquities were exactly inflicted upon us? We're just supposed to ignore that and sit there and say, well, you know what? Okay, you guys have the right to talk to us about how we should communicate with one another. I want to emphasize this. I'm not talking about the workplace. I respect it and I understand it. I'm talking about that people have gone far. Skip, you turn on talk radio everywhere else. You got white folks, because there ain't a bunch of black folks hosting radio shows. Let's be real about that. Got a bunch of white folks on the air talking about what word we shouldn't use with each other. Really? The nerve.
Let's be clear about this. John Wooten is a black man. I don't think we pointed that out.
Oh, no, we didn't. You're right.
We have in the past, but just not just now. But I got it. I got it.
I have known John Wooten since 1979. I know him very well. I have kept in close touch with him since 1979. I have had many, many, many discussions with John about what you just talked about. But I am obviously a white man. So I don't want to play in here with you because I don't know. I defer to you on everything you just said. But I do know John's position on this. and he feels at least as angry about it opposite you as you do on your side of this fence. And you guys have gone at it a little bit, I understand, behind the scenes, right? You've had some communication.
I'll explain that in a minute, but go ahead. Yes,
fair enough.
That is fair.
Okay. So what can I talk about as a white man here? Well, obviously, there's one small piece to this puzzle that that you didn't touch. Do I have any doubts that occasionally in the heat of battle, a white player to this day will occasionally call a black player in the heat of NFL battle the N-word ending in the hard ER, in the evil way that it was intended to be used to demean the black race to begin with, which you're talking about from slavery days? Yes, I do. I believe it gets uttered, but it's uttered under breath. It's uttered out of earshot of most referees. That's not probably what the legislation is intended to eliminate, though certainly if you heard a white player call a black player that word, however he said it, with the hard ER, obviously that would be a 15-yard flag. I think that should be ejection, but you know how I feel about that word. I've said many times on the show, most evil word in the history of the English language. I have said, I wish we could eradicate the word. Okay, my only fear here is what John Wooten has said to me many, many, many times, which is, I'm just throwing this up to you from John. What message is the black community sending to the young white kids who listen to rap music about taking a word, as Michael Eric Dyson says, draining the poison out of that word with the hard ER, putting the A on the end of it, and making it a term of endearment, black to black?